Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Marketing Happy Hour. We used to call it the Don't Dream It, Stream It live stream. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Christpher Vogelmann of Maximize Your Media, our digital agency, and Life Beyond Practice, which is my coaching group for doctors who want more free time, freedom, and funds with their own online businesses. And with me, as always, even though I appear to be looks like I'm being scanned by a barcode reader. Whoa, there we.
Your other host, John Paduchak. How's everybody doing today? Yes, johnpaduchak.com, and Targeted Net Solutions is our digital agency. Man, we got a lot of stuff going on too, Doc. A lot of Facebook groups.
I still think, I have my shades drawn, but I'm still, it looks like my facility seems to think that I'm a UPC code.
Some line need to be scanned.
I'm going to get a really bad tan line from what I can see right here.
It's going to be
right down the middle. There we go. I'm going to change this over. Let's see if we go that way. That didn't help anything.
That didn't help any.
Well, that's the joy of going live.
Got to move around a little bit.
Oh well. Duct tape should fix this problem.
The joys of out of control lighting.
Hey, what you drinking? It's a happy hour. It's hump day happy hour. What you got?
Water is all I could grab.
Water. I have my homemade Frappuccino, which is simply coffee on ice with a little bit of cream, no sugar.
That sounds good, actually. I was going to have my usual kombucha, but couldn't make it to the fridge before the broadcast.
Didn't make it to the fridge. I wonder if does this help at all if I do this? That's a good question. Well, it diminishes. It makes my face a little brighter, but that's about it. It doesn't do anything much more.
Yeah,
that's really sad. So today's title, for those of you who are popping on by right now, was the best kind of gin.
Right.
If you're in marketing, especially if you're in live video marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the best kind of gin? Besides oxygen? It's Origin. Origin.
Yes.
Not Origel.
Where you came from to get to where you
Where'd you come from? Where'd you be going?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. So I have a little outline that we put together here. So we're going to talk about origin stories. And I think we're talking about before there was video, we had teleconferences and online conference calls and all that stuff.
We had racks and and chisels.
And then we had the advent of webinars, I guess. That was the next evolution. And you did some work with, was it Webinar Jam? Or
I did. We did a little bit of stuff with Webinar Jam for a while.
And that was, I think that was interesting because they pioneered, I guess it was Mike Filsame who pioneered the idea of the Ever webinar, and along with Andy Jenkins. Wasn't that true?
Andy Jenkins, yeah.
Yeah. Who is no longer with us, unfortunately.
Yes.
But so when we're talking about origins, I think it's important to kind of know the history and the history of live video and how that history projects us to a trajectory. I could go this way as opposed to this way, moving forward so that we can, to some degree, anticipate the changes that may be occurring, and also riding that particular wave of not just the advent of video, but the ascendancy of video, because video has become probably the most important marketing tool that we have out there other than our own email lists.
Your lighting condition is fascinating me.
I don't understand it.
I don't know.
I could just go wild and let the whole thing just go like that.
I think that's worse.
that makes it worse. I'm just going to shut it down. I'm hoping. That's the problem right there. I feel like I'm having an eye exam done. Actually,
something.
Anyway, it is what it is. It's the seasonal change during the summer. This never happened. During the winter, never happened. Yeah. But now that the angle of the sun has changed, it's just, But I prefer natural light, but not this much natural light.
My challenge is now I'm going pitch black. So it's much more difficult with arranging.
Yeah, the advantage that you have is actually that your camera is so incredibly adaptive that even when it was pitch black outside, like a couple weeks ago, you were well illuminated. I don't think that was ever an issue.
In fact, I heard Logitech just came out with a new wide-angle camera. My son was telling me about the other day.
Is it Mac and PC compatible?
I believe so.
Oh.
The 930 was, I mean, this is an older camera now, but the challenge with the 930 over the 920 was that it wouldn't work with a lot of the different software packages. Like it wouldn't adjust and all of that like the 920 would. So you couldn't zoom in and do all these other different things with it.
You know, it just occurred to me in terms of capabilities. Wasn't it that EverWebinar and GoToWebinar, they were primarily screen share or slide share programs? There really wasn't a lot of live video going through there. Was there in the early days? Did I lose you?
Yeah. No, there was still video going through.
Oh, okay. You were talking earlier today about spooling. I'm sorry that
Google Hangout.
if my scan is bothering you, let me go this way.
I'm so distracted.
Sorry, I'm not doing anything for the ADD in us. I mean, if I go right down the middle, that's not so good either. No. I don't know. Do I go this way? Oh,
yeah,
hey, we did it.
An angle.
Oh, now it's on my nose.
You just got to lean back.
Lean back. Sit back. I'm gonna move this around. Man, live video is just dangerous sometimes.
Dangerous. So we were going to go back to the beginning, though.
Way back at the beginning.
Way back at the beginning. And way back at the beginning, we all got started with this through Google Hangouts, which was fascinating at the time because not only were we able to hop into broadcasts with each other, which is really hard to do now. We don't really have that method of being able to jump into things with each other like in a whim, like we did with Hangouts.
Well, that was pretty whimmy. I mean, in fact, I still get people. It's happened less, but I was constantly getting people inviting me in, and there were some crazy people who were into stuff.
And we met people. I mean, we both met people during that time frame that we're still really good friends with today.
Yeah,
which is amazing. So
I married one of them.
That's even more funny.
That's a discussion for a later day.
That's pretty cool. But it's true. We ran into all kinds of interesting people and people that we still continue to work with and do business with today. It was a fascinating time to be in live video and video in general. But I think that aside from the being able to kind of jump into groups on a whim, we still have a better opportunity, or there's more opportunity today with the different platforms that are out there.
Well, but there are also scheduled broadcasts. I mean, I remember doing some. I had one called Epic Influencers where I brought in people like David Amerland and Martin Sherrington and Ronnie Bincer and a whole bunch of other people. Yeah,
and I did too. We ran an interview kind of series as well where we had Mike Filsame and Joel Comm and my friend Steve Rosenbaum and a bunch of different people who popped in and joined us, and it was a blast.
It was a lot of fun because you had genuine relationships and a lot for the spontaneous Google Hangouts. I mean, they would go on for hours. You have like a 5-hour hangout and you'd rotate the entire audience 2 or 3 times through the whole thing.
And we had hangout-a-thons, where we would like hang out forever, kind of through. Some people would do them through days where they would just, a new person would come in and host and take over. I saw that Groove did that over the last weekend.
I was
on live streamathon.
Yeah, I went through a couple of those with Rich Sheffrin and Mike Filsame and others. It was pretty interesting. So after Google Hangouts were interesting because Google G Plus was designed by engineers, almost for engineers. And I think the interface was not terribly intuitive. And as a result, sometimes it was hard to figure out where the buttons were and what to do and where and what to push at any particular time.
Incredibly difficult. We actually built a business model off of it.
Yeah, I think it was Martin Sherrington who had Plus My Business. And the Plus My Business, I think the poor guy, he went into a Minus My Business when Google Plus disappeared.
Yeah, and the fantastic thing about it too was that Google Plus pretty much highlighted your broadcasts. So anytime you did a broadcast, you got tons of people watching you, which we still can do with Facebook and Instagram, but it's there's still the same thing going on, but it's a little different.
Well, and I think there's a certain element of pay to play on those platforms, which we didn't see in the early days of Google, because Google Plus and Google Hangouts, they just wanted to get more users, because it was, in some ways, it was a little bit of a wasteland, a little bit of a desert. And the joke was within social media that nobody was there on Google Plus, but I beg to differ. There were a lot of
people on Google Plus. In fact, I really enjoyed it as far as a social media platform. Gosh, you got a lot of play on it, and people were popping in. It was a very, very cerebral group of people, I think, on Google Plus.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Engineering types, people like us, were very attracted to it.
Well, because that's why because you had to try and figure out what the interface, how to use it. So
that was good too.
Puzzle sometimes. Well, then from Google Hangouts, then we had the advent of, when that was disappearing, we had the advent of Blab.
Yes. And that was fun.
Blab was fun. Blab was kind of like it was like Google Hangouts Lite, but it was still, I guess it was a little more intuitive. There were a lot of people from Google Hangouts who came onto Blab. I do remember that.
Yeah, a lot of people from Google Hangouts who came onto Blab, and then Blab made the mistake of coming in as a free service.
Yeah,
so they would have been around a lot longer if they had come up with some kind of a plan, even a basic plan to charge. But my understanding is that the streaming of all the video just completely sapped them of all the venture capital funding that they had.
Your burn rate for hosting everything in live video and then saving those videos for future playback was tremendous. So
what we got out of that, though, is that made the 4UP in a square very familiar to us, right? So we're seeing that a lot now with StreamYard and BeLive. StreamYard now has 10UP, but
nobody has 7UP other than your local convenience store.
Exactly. They were the only ones who had that. Yeah. And then one thing you do notice though now is like StreamYard and BeLive have paid plans, so they don't want to get broke doing this, which I totally understand.
Well, and they do limit you too. I got onto Zoom for a while there, during the early stage of the pandemic, and they have a 40-minute limit, and then they cut you off. And for some reason, they started sending me messages. Hey, would you like to go an hour? Would you like to continue to an hour and 50?
I think you can still go an hour.
No, they've been cutting me off lately again.
Oh, they cut it back.
So I prefer to go into StreamYard mainly because with Zoom right now, you're still at that 720p and 1080 is what we're using in StreamYard now, which makes it a lot more convenient for repurposing.
And much more convenient for repurposing.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let me see. So we talked about Blab. Blab was great because you saw a lot of the familiar faces on Blab. And I think that's where I got to spend more time with Mike Alton and Joel Comm and Stephanie Liu and a few other people. And then Blab, I just think that, they must have been blabbing a little too much and they got cut off. They failed to blab to their venture capitalists about, what their burn rate was.
They failed to monetize.
Failed to monetize, really. And then we saw the advent of Periscope. Now, Periscope was really interesting.
And it's still around.
It's still around. It is a Twitter property now. Mm-hmm. And you'll see Periscope. In fact, we are broadcasting right now through Periscope because StreamYard is allowing us to do 8 different locations. I have not been going to Twitch as of late based on our past experience.
No, our past experience with Twitch was not so great.
Son of a Twitch and daughter and whoever else was coming in through there. But Periscope, once again, it was the advent actually of the vertical video format that we saw. Right. I don't recall seeing that prior to Periscope. I could be wrong on that one. But Periscope, and then we also had Vine, were these 6-second videos that came shortly after Periscope. Vine. In fact, our 13-year-old still is reminiscing about Vines that he saw. And I'm like, Vines? What year are you in that you're talking about a Vine? So,
and Vine was a big thing.
It was, yeah. All these things. And I think the closest thing that we see to Vine nowadays is probably TikTok and Instagram Reels, which we'll get to a little later.
Yeah, and maybe Snapchat just for the size.
Snapchat, true, also.
A little bit.
The ability to delete everything before your parents catch you.
Right. I don't know how many people are using Snapchat.
I don't know. It's still there. It
Well,
was extremely popular for a couple of years, and then it went public. And we have friends who actually bought stock in Snapchat and at its ascendancy, and then it dipped again. And I'm not sure what the if there's any sort of monetizing strategy for Snapchat other than perhaps advertising, ad space.
yeah.
And then we had also from Periscope, we kind of graduated more into Facebook Lives and YouTube Lives.
Live.
I think LinkedIn Live has been coming along, but both of us have been applying on numerous occasions, despite the fact we do a lot of live streams. And they just seem to have very few people actually doing LinkedIn Lives directly through their studio, their interface.
I know people who actually work for LinkedIn or have really close ties with LinkedIn who didn't have LinkedIn Live.
They can't get in there either.
No, and there doesn't seem to be any reason, because one of my friends, like out of nowhere, he goes, "Hey, I got LinkedIn Live." You got LinkedIn Live? How'd you get LinkedIn Live? So that, like I said,
there might be a little LinkedIn lottery that's going on behind the curtain that we don't know about. But but YouTube, doing live streaming through YouTube and Facebook seems to be the way that most people go. I would add Instagram in there, because Instagram has been very, very powerful in terms of live streaming. It's just that in that vertical space, vertical. In that vertical space, if you are hosting interviews, you have the host on the top and then the guest on the bottom, or vice versa. I can't quite remember. We've experimented with those. I will say that with a single person doing an Instagram Live, the amount of engagement is incredible. And because my wife Maggie, with Mom May's Kitchen Mexican food blog, she does her LinkedIn. She might eventually. She does her Instagram Lives at 1:00 Pacific here on the West Coast, and you get all these people joining, but there's this constant scrolling thing that's going through your video.
Right.
And as a producer of this, it's incredibly distracting to get your framing, to get the composition just right. When you see these things rolling in front of you with little waves, then people are waving, and I feel obligated to push the wave back at them. And every once in a while with the Instagram, I can tell you that if you push a wave too close to the bottom, it flips the camera to you. And those are some of the most embarrassing moments in the early Instagram Lives for my wife's cooking show. So, but let's talk about YouTube Live and Facebook Live, because those seem to be the ones that most people are using. Each of those platforms has their own, and they've developed this over time. They have their own studios, if you will. Creator studio, broadcast studio. The names all sound the same. They all just want to call them studio in some way, shape, or form. Now, what has been your experience, say, with the native app? Have you done much with YouTube Live, or really, because we seem to be broadcasting?
I haven't done much with YouTube native in a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still use essentially what was the Hangouts framework still for YouTube, and then you can tie into it with something else. Like we can tie into it with StreamYard, which is great. We can tie into it with BeLive, but BeLive is a one or the other. Tie into it with Zoom. Zoom again is a one or the other. Facebook
with Ecamm, a lot of people we know like Ecamm.
Ecamm or Wirecast or any, a lot of those. OBS. Yeah, same kind of thing. And for the most part, it's great because YouTube looks at everything as being native, connecting to it. Where Facebook.
Oh, real? I did not realize that. So you don't need a special stream key or anything like that.
Some things you still need a stream key, but it doesn't go through like an API. StreamYard, we go through an API, and BeLive, we go through an API. And there's an API. So anything without the API appears to get better traction. So if we use Facebook's native app, we use Instagram, Instagram, you can only use a native form.
Have you had any luck with that recently? Because I kind of gave up on it only because in the early stages of using Facebook's native app, I was noticing that I could have my face. It gave me the option to change to screen share. Yeah. But the problem was once I chose one, I couldn't switch to the other.
Yeah, I haven't tried screen sharing. Usually when I use Facebook native, I just do videos like this.
Right.
Talking about a subject.
Do you get the two people in there now? or no? Because
That's something we got to try again, because
okay,
you're supposed to be able to.
we should try that.
It only works on an iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, it only works from the iPhone.
That is hilarious because usually Facebook has always been primary a desktop application, and mobile was relegated to the denizens of the deep.
In fact, I thought maybe the 2-Up was working on a PC or Mac,
Yeah,
and Android, but according to what I've read, it appears it's just for iPhone.
huh? Isn't that interesting? Well, I mean, they are getting 70% plus on mobile, so it kind of makes sense that they changed their focus to mobile.
Yeah, it's a lot more on mobile.
Yeah. Very interesting. Let me see. Whatever. We took a couple other notes here that I had.
Of course, we were saying today, most of the video applications are more related to the iPhone, anyways.
Yeah, and but you were mentioning that too. That when it came to Android. I was Andrew. Andrew's my brother-in-law.
Yeah, you're kind of getting the short end of the stick if you got an Android phone still, which is too bad in a way. But there's just not as many video apps or camera apps and things on the Android as there is for the iPhone.
Well, you think about it too, because when we do advertising in our agency, when we do advertising targeting, we can choose when we're targeting an ad to a particular group. We can choose people who use iPhone and iPad and Macs, for example. Mm-hmm. They tend to be a higher income group with more disposable income. So you may be a very successful person with an Android tablet or phone. But I can tell you that because I think maybe it's because of the status and the chicness of Apple products and the sort of thing that it's sort of an upscale brand, we tend to find that when we want to really differentiate and target people, they will tend to be those who have the video capabilities in iOS on those Apple products.
Yeah, and there's cameras like the Mevo camera, mm-hmm. And the Pivo, which is a movement device that moves your camera to follow you or your iPhone to follow you. They only work on iPhone. As far as I know, they still only work on iPhone.
So so Facebook seems to be prejudiced towards mobile, which is interesting.
Yeah, so if you're really going to get serious about video, and you're looking to buy a new mobile device, an iPhone or an iPad will let you participate in the most applications for video. Yeah.
And the iPhone 12 just came out yesterday. I only made it through about 24 minutes of that presentation yesterday, but there were some pretty cool things that were available. It's just a question of how much 5G is actually rolled out across the planet at this point. So, but we were talking also about Instagram. I mentioned the Instagram Live a little earlier, but the thing that's pretty cool about Instagram Live is that despite the fact that it's in that vertical positioning, you can actually repurpose those videos even onto something like YouTube, which is horizontal. But you have to be a little bit careful because you're looking at things that are fairly centered in your original composition in order to be able to fit that into a horizontal format. But also, Instagram Lives go really well and very quickly into IGTV, where they live almost forever. And you can also put your live broadcasts can go into your highlights on your Instagram account, which is pretty cool. That's an evolution in and of itself just over the last several months.
And it's that brings up a good piece to talk about. It's the fact that on Facebook Live, your broadcasts don't live or may not live very long.
Right.
YouTube, they're going to last much, much longer, possibly forever.
Yeah.
So the things that you film live that you want to keep, you want to find a good place to.
And God forbid about your TikToks have even a shorter lifespan on Twitter.
Even shorter lifespan.
Not TikTok. Sorry, I'm talking about your Periscope. I had TikTok on the brain because has been the next evolution in short form video, which are these 15-second ones. And in accordance with that, Instagram came out with Instagram Reels. And I don't know what kind of traction Reels has compared to TikTok, but you just see these, just a lot of goofy stuff, but man, there's so many followers and TikTok has the potential for driving a lot of traffic. I think that, this Instagram, hey, look at me also, I guess that's the look-alike or sound-alike or doing something with Reels.
Yeah, I haven't that much.
Yeah, I mean, Reels is fairly recent. In fact, I was at a watching, I think it was Mari Smith on a Facebook Live a couple weeks ago, and she was lamenting that she went to Reels on her phone and she didn't have music. And I scrolled through to my phone and I had music, yet she is sort of the queen of social media. So as once again, sometimes there's no rhyme or reason why you may get a particular function that works within live video.
Yeah, and I think there's still a few functions that are not nationwide yet or worldwide yet.
And they just roll out over time. And but it's funny too, because I do remember certain things rolling out on Facebook where you would see something like it was like a little rocket ship at one point at the bottom of your mobile device, and it was like whatever was hot or popular, and I got it, and then it disappeared. It was like the Zook giveth and the Zook taketh away. And so that was just kind of bizarre to me that, features could be rolled out and then disappear and they come back again. Like stories have made a reappearance on Facebook, particularly on mobile.
Yeah.
So that you can go straight to stories now. And I think there is a movement from what I recall, to creating a desktop version of Instagram, which would be great for marketers, maybe not so much for consumers. So anyway, so let's see. Have we covered most of the things that we were going to talk about? I think we have.
I think we have covered quite
at least in terms of origin. So do you have any speculation about what you might be coming on the horizon with respect to video? Are we looking at shorter form videos, longer form videos, the reinvention of Google Hangouts? What is AI? You're a graphic design guy. I'm thinking what AI is going to do, or VR might come to.
That's going to be interesting to see, because we're seeing more and more automated transcription.
Yeah,
with videos, and that's all AI related. So that's definitely something we're seeing a lot more of.
Well, the automated transcription. Yeah, transcriptions, but also captioning. And I know that, captioning can be a little problematic, because you'll see sometimes captions on some social platforms which really are not correct at all. In particular, we noticed that with my wife's Mexican food blogs videos, because she sometimes lapses into Spanglish. And so the AI cannot handle English and Spanish together, and so there's a lot of editing of captions to make those videos more, I guess, watchable with the sound off.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I remember we used to read YouTube video transcriptions just for fun and
for fun.
Oh, they used to be hysterical.
Particularly if they came out offshore, either from India or China or Bangladesh.
But now they've improved. Well, I think it was all AI then, but now they've improved.
Really?
As far as I know, I think it was mostly AI at the time, even then. And I know that, like, if I go to do speech to text on my iPhone, it's usually crazy and full of autocorrect things going on. But if I do it to my Android tablet or directly into Google Docs or the like, it's quite good. So they're really coming a long ways with transcription.
That's great. So that way, so video suddenly pushes its way into the written word, which takes us back to where we were originally with blogs, which is written content. Never underestimate the power of the written word.
I've always said the two go well together. Because if you want to speed read through something or move quickly through something, it's always nice to have a set of directions, or to be able to read something quickly. And you can't always watch a video quickly. Some of us can speed them up and, we can get through quickly. Others of us, speeding up is maybe not an option. We can't really absorb the content at double speed. So it's always kind of nice to have multiple forms of content. So I see that actually fits in nicely with, blogging, and you can have video and you can have the transcription along with it.
Vlog versus blog. I just noticed that I'm illuminated on this side, and you're illuminated on the other side over there. There's a single light source between us.
Yes.
It's called the sun. Although I think you've gone dark at this point.
Actually, it's the opposite. My light source is on the other side. Funny
Oh,
enough.
so strange. Well, so any final thoughts here before we wrap up, and then we'll just encourage people to come over to the marketing happy hour to join our page, because I think we're going to be limiting things in here.
Well, I think it's been fun. I always like the, we always hear the phrase that history has the tendency to repeat itself, right? And we are kind of seeing some repetition of some old things that came out way back, now kind of coming back around into video again.
Yeah, I think it's like the TikTok of today is the Vine of yesterday.
Yeah. So you are seeing some old ideas kind of wrap back around into what we're seeing in video now. And I expect that we'll probably see some more interesting application of things that we've seen before pop back into what we have today. And we were talking a little bit. We didn't go too much into detail about webinar platforms, but webinar platforms changed a lot too. Where in the original stages, you're right about the SlideShare thing. Most of what we did was SlideShare, and then Webinar Jam, because it was connected to Google Hangouts, really kind of brought that video aspect of being able to like and trust people, and really see the person that was talking to you.
I completely forgot about the Google Hangouts.
We wanted to bring into that. I just remember. And so that's one thing that I think we'll be seeing more of as time goes on, because people like to associate or see who's behind the slides, and it's one of the things you and I talk about frequently. Is that's one of people's biggest fears. It's easy for them to speak behind the slides, but they don't want to necessarily have their face on camera because maybe they got a face for radio, like some of us do, or they don't like their voice, or they don't like what they look like.
They don't like something.
That's always something, right? And so I think you're going to see, well, and even this, we were talking about, I can't change the positions of the framing here in StreamYard. You can.
Oh yeah, I have power.
Yeah, but if you want to walk through those for a second, you can see that
go through there. Which
StreamYard has changed kind of the positioning in ways that we're framed or we can appear.
Let me see if I can find something here.
Different ones. So they got the large to small and the small to large. And
in fact, I'm going to take you over to, let's see, not health broadcasters. We're going to go. Oh, is that going to? I'm just wondering if it's going to screw me up.
But to share something? No, you'll be
fine. If I share, so I'm going to just do a screen share because I'm not going to open it. So for those of you who are interested, in the power of live video, you can actually share screens.
Yeah.
And in this one, I'm going to just share using the Google Chrome tab. I'm going to go to the Book of Faces. And
look at that.
This gives me the opportunity to go to, that's our page, the Marketing Happy Hour, where we happen to be broadcasting in there right now.
Look at that.
With our delay, of course. But see, but the interesting thing is it allows us to do this. And the other thing that we actually can do, if you're really nervous about doing stuff, you never want to have your face on these things, you can just go to full screen.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about that. The other thing that reminds me of this reminds me of, actually, let me take this because I want to show, is this the top? The Marketing Happy Hour. There it is. Oh, you know what? That was our old one right there. That was I didn't change the banner today. That was one of the things I just realized. I got the camel on there for Hump Day. So, Hump Day, my face, your face,
yep,
our faces, and back to our regular places.
Back to our regular view. So we're seeing a lot of evolution in the way that we can present, in the way that we can be seen.
Also, I was thinking the one that has been used by a lot of consultants too, which is Loom. And Loom, take a screen. You'll have a screen share, and your face will be a little bitty face down in the corner. Mm-hmm. So it gives a lot of information in terms of the visual, but with a little face in the corner, you can barely see. You get the audio, and you get the sense that the person is talking to you. And we've seen that a lot also on webinars, where it was a Mario Brown or a Frank Kern or. Actually, Frank just likes to do the plain screen share most of the time.
There's a lot of other video tools like that coming out. There's another one called Dub that was something that was on
I saw that too
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah.
AppSumo. It was an AppSumo
Mm.
product for a bit when it first came out.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing things like Hopin and
That's
number of large, more live summit to virtual summit types of applications. So there's a big evolution.
Yeah, I think with live video, it's quite curious because we were on that huge Unleash the Power thing, the UPW Tony Robbins thing back, I think it was April. It was either April or May, somewhere in that range. And it was essentially, there were 23,500 people who registered for that. It was the largest Zoom call in the world, I'm sure. But there were family members too. So it topped out above 30,000 people, and they would breakout rooms of maybe, I think it was 7 or 8 people in each breakout room. And that was a technological marvel because that studio was built. It was a $9 million studio that was built specifically for that one online event. And of course, it can be utilized now for a number of other events, including, I think there's another upcoming UPW very soon, like within a week or two.
You see a lot more events going now. Well, obviously because they have to, but there's a lot more events going virtual that normally we would go to as a live event. So,
and I mean, there are some cost savings in this evolution of video that we are seeing. I mean, the big issue seems to be bandwidth, and because if everybody's staying home in your particular neighborhood at any particular time, your bandwidth will suffer. We have seen that over and over again with Zoom classes for our 13-year-old, along with we're trying to do streaming at the same time. And, another one of us, because my wife and I both work from home, so we're constantly sucking up bandwidth, and we have to sometimes ration bandwidth like some people might ration food or water.
Yes.
So
there's quite a few people in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the evolution or devolution of the current platforms. And I think, but it's amazing what you can actually accomplish also using LTE as a connection if you're doing live on your phone. Because those signals are getting stronger, and there are more and more towers. And John and I were both talking about a little bit earlier about the idea that with T-Mobile acquiring Sprint, that there were many more locations than perhaps Verizon had, but Verizon is trying to roll out their network with Apple, and it becomes more and more interesting. My concern in the long term is the overproduction of video and the lack of consumers for video. That maybe, are we going to run into a situation where there's too much video out there that people can't possibly view it all?
It doesn't seem like it.
No, there's an insatiable appetite for video.
It really seems that way. It's like more and more stuff is going to video. I think they said that in the next couple of years, we'll probably have as much as 70 to 80% of our content that we consume will be video. So,
because we all just want to sit back and watch TV.
Yeah, I guess.
That's what I do think that the evolution of, in particular, say the Facebook Lives, the Instagram Lives, the YouTube Lives, having chat that you can respond to during a live broadcast creates a far greater degree of engagement than simply having a video that you post and then wait to answer the comments later. I think people love the idea nowadays, in particular, we've seen this with StreamYard and others, of seeing their name in lights. It's almost like being on Broadway. If you can highlight their comment or their question, I think that increases the engagement in any of your live broadcasts.
Yeah, it's nice that we have the ability to do that, at least with a couple of platforms. They may not be the ones we use all the time, but we can blend that in and bring that into the picture.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing to remember here is the one thing that's maintained itself and remained the same is that in the origin of this, we got into live video because we saw the excitement of it and the ability to build relationships.
Yeah.
And that still continued. You're gonna get more tighter relationships with people. In fact, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this story to you or not, but I'll tell you a little quick story. When we first got started with Google Hangouts, I used to run a class where I help people with their summits and get started with that platform. And I had 2 or 3 people. One of them is my friend Ed, who you met. And I had never met Ed or Adam Levine before in person. We'd never met in person ever. And we ended up, because Ed lives in Connecticut, my friend Adam lives in New York. We're still all of us really good friends, but it was like when we did finally meet, it was like we took off like we'd known each other for 20 years because we'd done so much work with each other through video. So that's huge.
I mean, I can speak to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most people can.
Yeah, because one of the things, because you do make between the inflection, the expressions, the visual in and of itself, the conveying a sense of humor and intention and all these other seemingly intangible factors. My wife and I both had a friend from Google Hangouts named Nazim, and Nazim is a New Yorker who has been living decades now in Italy. He married an Italian woman, Betty, when they met in Miami, and he wound up moving to Italy. And so a couple of years ago, we went to Italy, along also to Switzerland, and we met up with Nazim in Milan, and it was as if it was just seamless. It was just a continuation of everything that we had done online over the course of 5 years. Mm-hmm. It was so funny, except he was taller than I imagined him being.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that. I could tell that story about a number of different people that I know. One of my friends just recently had lymphoma surgery, and I'm like practically we've only met again through here. We got together in person last year, came up for a visit, hung out with me for a week, and I've dealt that with a lot of people. I changed my whole business to where I met people in person quite frequently to almost 100% virtual in the last couple of years.
And that was really pre-pandemic too.
Yeah, pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. It's just because of health reasons I wasn't able to get around as much to meet with people, and I changed, to a much more virtual approach. I really haven't felt any difference.
Yeah. You haven't noticed much of a difference. It's sort of like, it's like the whole thing about working from home. All these people suddenly, I'm working from home. And so having worked from home for so many years, it was sort of like, I mean, the only difference that we saw was that suddenly we've got to homeschool a kid, whereas before that wasn't in there. And so when he went off to school, we had a lot more time to get things done, and we weren't fighting over bandwidth.
Right. In fact, I would even say that working virtually, I've seen some huge advantages because I have tremors, and I used to do a lot of live seminars and all this. And over the last few years, my tremors have gotten worse, but most people never even know that I have them.
Right.
Working virtually. But if we were together in person, you'd notice that. To me, I'm very self-conscious about that too. And it's hard for me to actually work with people in person because of that. And also hard for me to speak and do summits and that kind of stuff because of that. But virtually, I could do anything. So it's
you can do virtually anything.
Virtually anything. There you go. So for me, it's been a huge change to have this available. So in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I think that and the possibilities are almost endless. I'm really curious as we move forward as to what can be done with Hopin and other types of virtual summit software. I mean, you do need a bit of a control room to do a 30,000 person Zoom call. Yeah. But yeah, especially with the breakout groups and the leaders and stuff.
And that's certainly an evolution to, most of us have been to a Zoom meeting, but in that particular system, you've got an expo floor. You've got networking, which is kind of like speed networking, speed dating.
Yeah,
which is cool. And then you've got breakout rooms, and you have a main stage, and you can have up to 100,000 people in it, which is pretty crazy. I'm not planning on ever testing that.
But you can have your keynote speakers and others.
Yeah.
I remember Brian Fanzo, his big thing. I saw him at Social Media Marketing World a couple of times, as well as traffic and conversions. And these are industry type, what do we call them? Symposia or seminars or conventions, really, as they're conventions. And he had to reconfigure everything. Being a live in-person keynote speaker, he had to reconfigure everything to be able to be doing all of it virtually, and so including keynotes. And I'm really kind of curious to see what one of his keynotes looks like.
Yeah, that would be cool to see.
Because you need a lot of energy on a keynote speech. And then if you, you will feed off of your audience. And if you don't have the audience there, then you're kind of starved to a certain extent for that kind of energy. So
true.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's see. We want to remind people of a couple of things as we wind down here. We were winding down about 15 minutes ago, but we kind of get, sometimes we try to wind, in the attempt of winding down, we kind of wind up.
We do.
That is one of the things that we do when we get together. So we do have a page here. Some of you are watching this broadcast on the Marketing Happy Hour, which I feel fortunate that Facebook allowed us to get. If you do that little @ the Marketing Happy Hour, you can find us very easily here. We also are within a smaller group and page by the same name, by a different name, which is called Health Broadcasters. So for those of you who are in the health professions, the doctors, nurses, massage therapists, physical therapists, naturopaths, a whole bunch of them, you name it. If you're in the health professions, we talk a lot about how to grow your practices with using live video broadcasting. And we have some special things that are coming out in the next week or two that you may want to take advantage of. Yeah. So keep an eye out here and join us over at Health Broadcasters. In fact, I think what I may do is just change healthbroadcasters.com into a referral back to the page, just like Troy does with live event marketers.
I think that's a good move.
So that might be a good thing for us to do. So is there anything else that you have to share, John?
No, that was my one major 15-minute extra tangent.
One little 15-minute tangent for all of you to enjoy.
There was one we did talk about earlier, and I think it's important to mention. So,
well, yeah, and I think we both have used live broadcasts to cut through the chaos and cut through the mayhem.
Indeed.
In order to work our way into the hearts and minds of all of those prospects who we eventually convert into raving fans. So if you want to learn more and want to tune in to us dropping these little tips, tricks, and tactics, come on back again. We'll be here next week at the same bat time, same bat channel, which is 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central, 4 Mountain, and noon Hawaiian Standard Time. I know you're watching from Oahu. That's the only reason I mention you now. All right, we'll be back next week. See you later.
See you then.
Alligator.